My dog started barking right then. What the fuck? It's like perfect timing. Salutations, everybody. This is Karak with ACG, and I am here with...
And I'm Dustin with Handsome Phantom. I almost screwed that up.
It's all right. It's a little bit different. We're doing H.A.M Radio Broadcast episode 262, or podcast. I call it broadcast every time. I'm just leaving that in. Matty... and what's weird is broadcast is what, because like Fallout's like the old antenna 1950s. So when I jumped on the podcast with Matty, I kept thinking it was called the broadcast, and that's what it was like, like a ham radio. They were trying to mimic a ham radio broadcast, and I called it I've done this like a bunch of times. But Matty couldn't be here. He is ill today, so we decided we'd jump in. We don't have a ton of stuff to cover, really, when it comes to news. A lot of the stuff has been covered, but there's some new games that have come out we're definitely going to get to. We've got some patron questions from Matty's patron that we're going to get to, and we'll be talking about what we've been playing. I definitely appreciate those people who put in their questions in the Discord. I saw a couple in there. Probably not a ton, because I did put that notice in late, but as always, I appreciate it. And you can go to Matty's Patreon, and I think it's $1 for Matty. Yeah, it's $1, and you can gain access to his Discord as well as early copies of this podcast, which come out, I believe, I can't figure out how he does it so quick, but I think he does this less than an hour, maybe an hour and a half after this podcast. He's like, he's on it for patrons. And so it comes out a couple days early for everybody, and then on Sunday it comes out for everybody else. So anyway, Dustin, thank you very much for showing up. We showed up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm like on one of those half vacations. Like, I'm visiting my parents, but I'm still working and doing my job. But when I'm not,
you
like,
still
I'm hanging out and stuff.
Matty couldn't be bothered, is all I'm saying.
Right.
I'm just saying, we showed up.
Right.
Where's Matty? No, I'm just joking. It does suck to be sick, especially when it's your throat, because he was like, I have a sore throat. I'm like, you can't really get away. You can't really fake. Like, how do you get through that? It's just going to suck no matter what.
Well, especially being sick right now, which I'm, most likely, hoping, everything's fine. He didn't seem to say anything about it being serious, but I feel like there's been a couple times due to everything going on that's like, if my throat feels bad, or I'm like
twice as worried.
No, it's happening.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well, look what I've got.
So
actually, like, sitting, I don't know if you can see that, but it's like, the nighttime Dayquil. If people are listening to this, it's nighttime Dayquil. Like the generic rip-off version, by the way, just the 99-cent version. But because I had a sore throat last night too, and dude, man, I sit there and I'm like, because we've already had it, we think. Well, I know one family member has for sure,
really?
And I had a friend die, ex-coworker passed away, and then another ex-coworker passed away a couple weeks after that from it. So like, I'm even more like, oh shit. And what's weird is, dude, it doesn't matter if you're healthy. It doesn't matter. It's like. It's scary,
dude. I keep thinking about how I was at PAX East late March, around thousands of people, and I'm like, there's no way that there wasn't some someone there or something. Like, I don't know. And maybe, who knows, that was so early on that maybe I could have been like got it and asymptomatic, whatever. I don't know.
You went
it's
to
crazy,
PAX
but
this year? Oh, damn.
Yeah.
Dude, did you get PAX at all? Did you get ill at all? Or did you just come home?
What's funny is not this year.
Right.
Usually I do. It's hard to tell because me and the other guys in the team, like, work ourselves to death and stay up late and eat nothing but like Pop-Tarts and energy drinks for 4 days. So usually I feel like shit when I get back.
Right.
Regardless of if I have a sickness or not. But this year I was actually pretty healthy when I got back. At least I thought.
You literally described my status quo of living. So I wonder how I'd feel. I'm not lying. Like, I stay up super late. Pop-Tarts I love. Energy drinks. I've got like 3 next to me. So maybe I'd feel amazing if I stopped. I'm just joking. I didn't feel any better.
Well, when after the real everything started really going down after PAX, I was like, you know what? I think it's all the Pop-Tarts and energy drinks that may have protected me when I was
like
at PAX.
South
It was
Park,
like
the role-playing game, you know, like you have a shield of Pop-Tarts around you, bouncing all of the different illnesses off. We'll move on from here because I don't want people thinking that's all we're going to talk about. We do have some cool things to discuss. We're going to talk about one game that does remind you a little bit of a virus, and Dustin's played it. Carrion, I guess. How do you pronounce it? Carrion, right?
Yeah, I was trying to figure this out because they kind of make a pun in the game because it says like keep calm and carry on in one of the signs. So I was like, I think it's carrion though.
I think that's how I've always pronounced it. So that put a question mark in my head. But anyway, this game, it's an indie game where you are basically the science experiment, the alien, right? And go ahead, give everybody your experience. Like, have you enjoyed it? What'd you like, dislike?
Yeah, this is definitely one of the more unique indie games. This is what I love about indie games is that even if a game isn't like an awesome 10 out of 10 experience, like I just love seeing new and creative ideas in the indie game world. And this is definitely one of them because and I think they even touted it in the marketing as a reverse horror game. So instead of running from a monster, you are the monster. And so you play as this like red blob. I don't know how else to describe it. I think probably what stands out the most is the movement, is that you can move like up, like there's no limit. I mean, it's a 2D game, but it's not like you're walking around on feet or you're crawling around. You actually your tentacles shoot up all over the place and you can crawl all over the map. So yeah, you go around and you can eat people, and then there's some puzzle solving, and throughout the game, it's a Metroidvania, so you like get new abilities as you play. It's kind of light on the story, but there are some interesting things that kind of show what happened and how this monster came to be. But like I said, it's just one of those really creative ideas when you're playing it. You're like, wow, I don't know if I've ever played anything quite like this.
And I love the roar ability. The ability to roar, and everybody in the level is like fearful suddenly and changes the way they act. I thought that was very well done.
Right.
What did you think about like the mechanics themselves? Did you actually enjoy the way it moved around? Did you enjoy the eating? Because you eat to get more health. Do you eat to heal, or do you get more mouths when you eat?
So it's kind of both. Like I know you eat people and it will heal your health, and eventually you'll unlock the ability where you just become bigger. And so when you eat people, there's like, I think by the end of the game, there's 3 different sizes. And that's kind of what's interesting, is that there's certain points of the game to solve certain puzzles that you have to like downsize. And you do this disgusting thing where you like break off part of yourself in water, and there's like a weird mass, which you can then go and swallow back up later if you want to become bigger, or you can just eat people and then regain your mass that way. But so as far as the mechanics, that's one of the things that I didn't like as much about the game, is that to eat people, I'm trying to even describe, like if you're playing on a controller, you're moving around with the left stick, and the right stick brings up like a little reticule that you can move around, and you kind of got to target people and like grab them. And in some of the intense moments, it just feels like you're like flailing around all crazy, and it's kind of hard to even realize what's going on, which may be part of the design actually. But some of the combat kind of felt a little janky to me. But I don't even think necessarily they want you to go, you know, balls to the wall trying to eat everybody at once. There's like a big, I don't want to call it stealth, because it's definitely not, but they definitely encourage like you sneaking up above or below somebody and then just like grabbing them real quick. So Karak, did you
just for a little bit of time?
Too,
I actually watched one of the guys. I played it a little bit and got accustomed to movement, but then ended up but one of the Discord guys was playing, and he wanted to stream it, and watched him. And yeah, I mean, from what I saw, I guess I would agree with all that. I thought I really liked the movement. I also liked the fact of like there were times where it felt like a movie a movie moment because you were the one who was
Right.
in the roof waiting for a guy to pass instead of being the guy, and that's what happens in movies where like the blob is up in the rafters or whatever. I thought that was very well done. The only thing I personally was sort of shocked at was how small the levels were. So like you would go from one end of the one hall, or like, sorry, I'm one wall to the other wall in like a quarter of a second, and then there was another fade out and load, and you were like, okay. And it was
Right.
there was not a lot of scrolling, like at least, and again, he didn't play it all the way through, so I don't know if that happens later, but it felt like the world should have scrolled more, so you could almost like Ori in the Blind Forest, where you go, you know, up and down and it feels more spanning. That just did not seem to happen. I don't know, does that happen more as you played? Okay.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I noticed, was definitely that there are parts where there are really short sections, and it feels like I was especially if you've already cleared out an area and you're trying to backtrack or something, then it definitely feels like you're just going through a bunch of fade in and fade outs. But I think that's also connected to the other main issue I had with the game, is that there's no map, which I think that's also intentional, but I think it ends up being more confusing than anything else, because you were mentioning that roar, and the roar will ping other basically objectives, where there's either a part where you can like save and regain mass. Like it's almost like there's a little chunk of the monster that's like stuck at that point of the map. It's kind of hard to describe and kind of gross, but so yeah, getting around the map sometimes is confusing to figure out where to go. Just because if you think about a game like, you know, Super Metroid or something, that you always are checking the map and trying to figure out, okay, I need to go here. Not that the levels are that complex, but this game gives you very little as far as direction. It's just kind of like you go to the next, figure out where the next area is, go figure out the new ability, and then it does a pretty good job of guiding you along. But there's definitely points where I was like, you know, maybe just like a basic map, or even just telling me like, there's certain times where I couldn't figure out, I'm like, is this like a hub area? Am I in an individual level section almost? Like, it just got a little confusing in certain areas.
I can see that. I also think a game like that, you know, you could use a mini map, or you could do, you know, you could stick those pings up longer. There was a couple things that I saw when he was playing. It's still, I mean, you know, for what it was offering and just those kind of games, I think it's probably going to be something that a lot of people will like. It got really good ratings. I saw that. At least just going online and checking ratings, I was surprised, especially because I was coming off. I had the choice of that or Destroy All Humans, and I chose Destroy All Humans, and that one did not do as well on reviews, and so I was sort of shocked at the difference.
Yeah, our reviewer Dave at Handsome Phantom, he gave it an 8.5.
Carrion, or for
so he
Destroy?
really liked it. Yeah, for Carrion. Yeah, so he really liked it. I kind of was on the lower side a little bit, just because I found I hate getting lost in games. That's one of my number one annoyances. Like, that's one of the reasons I struggled with Hollow Knight a lot, is that I felt like I never knew where to go, which some people love that. Like, and in certain games, I like the freedom of exploration, but in a game like that, like especially 2D games, I just hate being lost. So, but yeah, it's a neat game. Devolver Digital, man, I feel like no matter what, it's very rare you're going to get a bad game from anything they publish. It's always going to be at least good or interesting.
Yeah, I mean, and they've probably released a bad one, and I just haven't tracked it, because they do release a lot too. But yeah, I would agree with that. They remind me in a strange way, I'm one of the few fans of this company, but Playway, who does all of the simulator games, like Thief Simulator and House Flipper, and I got into them a couple years ago and was stunned by how many good games they had, like blown away. Each time I was like, Mechanic Simulator, this is not a bad game. This is a Zen. It's not the most in-depth game, but I was like, this is actually pretty good. And then I did House Flipper, and I'm like, this is legitimately a blast. Like, what is happening? And then they release a bad game or two, but I think Devolver's got a lot of quantity, and luckily also has a lot of good quality. So if they have released a bad game, you and I probably just haven't pinged it. I mean, it might be out there, but it's just like, and it probably has. I think I remember one or two going, but overall, they're also at a good price, right? Because I think this one's probably, what, 10?
Yeah.
10-20. Oh,
right, and it's on Game Pass right now.
Which doesn't make any sense. So it's on Game Pass. So there you go. But if anybody's interested in it, basically you're the Blob from all of the horror movies, and you're killing people. Like it's right. And cool sounds. I thought the sounds were cool for that kind of game. Overall, it was actually quite enjoyable. Color-wise, it was pretty good as well. Speaking of color, I want to talk about, and I forgot to tell Dustin this, because it just popped up, but Other Side. Did you try this one?
This is one I worked on a preview for at PAX, so I'm familiar with the gameplay. I've not played
if anybody
myself,
doesn't know what this is basically like a turn-based battle game that's black and white for the most part, with some color splashes of red. It's Focus Home is the publisher. I'm sorry, I can't remember the developer's name, but it came out for reviews, did very well. This is another title that I passed up, and it got us on the discussion of color. I don't know about you, dude, but I'm telling you right now, black and white games don't work for me. They hurt my eyes. They make it like it's for a short amount of time. I'm fine, but I had the same issue with Obra Dinn. Did you play that game? The game where you're on the haunted ship, and it's like all newspaper looking, and you could choose the different color palettes.
Yes, that's the one from the creator
like
of
Voyage of
Papers,
the
Please,
Obra Dinn or
right?
whatever.
Yes.
Return of the Obra Dinn.
Return of the
I don't know,
Obra Dinn.
man. Maybe it's just me. I don't know if this happens to you.
Right.
But I have a hair in my eye. But what happens to me is black and white games. Saboteur is another game I played, which was a pretty good third person game for the Dreamcast PS2, but it was also black and white. It just hurts. That lack of contrast. It was the same thing that happened with Ghost of Tsushima. I just couldn't. The Kurosawa mode, it just didn't work for me. It doesn't offer enough visual data. Does that kind of stuff bother you? Or are you totally fine with it? Or have you even noticed it? Maybe it's just me.
I'm trying to think of the games I've played in black and white. Like I've played Limbo, and that one, it's so contrasty that it didn't affect me on a gameplay level. As far as these other games, I definitely feel like games that have black and white modes, I don't really. I guess, I mean, for people who want it, it's there. I love bright and colorful games in general, and this is one we'll talk about later. But Cuphead has a black and white mode, and I'm like, it's cool. I feel like it's cool to turn on and play for a level and be like, oh, this is, it's supposed to be black and white, old timey. But I don't know why you would want to play that game in black and white, because the coloring in it is so good. And the Kurosawa mode, I think, and we had talked about this a few weeks ago, but instantly when you're on that menu, so when you start up Ghost of Tsushima, it has the menu that has you choose whether you want to play in English, Japanese, and it brings up the Kurosawa mode. I had watched your review, or I had listened to it, and you had talked about the sound, and instantly that sound, and I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So, but yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think.
Do you remember Saboteur?
I think I just have such a preference to color.
You remember Saboteur? Old World War II game where you were a saboteur, but it was like against the Nazis. It was a Dreamcast, I think. I could be wrong. Sega 360 or maybe
I know
Xbox 360.
Yeah, I know what I've heard of that game, but I have not personally played it. Yeah. Is that the EA Saboteur? The pandemic one? Okay. I have not played that, but I'm looking at the box right now, so I know what you're talking about.
So people know this has also come out, so that's why we're talking about it. It's come out in the last couple days. Other Side, if you check it out, you can. There's some really cool stuff when it comes to how you go about doing battle and having to sacrifice characters to heal others. And it's definitely a lot, though, about repeating content. They even state very clearly that, like, the first couple times you play, you certainly are expected to die, start again, and this is built into the narrative. And so moving away from the black and white thing, it's just like, I don't know about you, but especially lately, the constant throwing humans on the gears of the war kind of thing, and like letting them die and then grabbing their skills and letting them die. It's not that I don't like them, it's just that a little bit of fiction doesn't work for me anymore. I need more to buy into that, because it is, even if they change it, it is still repeating content. And at some point, that repetition of content,
Right.
even if it's just the levels location. I played the Aztec one that came out about, it looked like Diablo, but you were Aztecs and you were always going from left to right. I don't know if you've seen this. About a month and a half ago. And it was the same way where like they knew you would die and you just start back up, with whatever you've learned from the prior battle and you continue on. And I don't know, man, it's not that I dislike those kind of games, the roguelike kind of games. It's just that it feels repetitive. Maybe it's just being a reviewer, but even I've played a couple of them outside of review now that I think about it, and I still dislike them. I don't know. Does that kind of stuff bother you, or are you I mean, are you not a fan of those? Do you like those kind of games?
For the most part, when I read about a game and it says roguelike in the description, I instantly am like, not that I'll hate it. I just know that there's a good chance that I probably won't like it, just because I think you're right. It all depends on how demanding of time it wants from you. Like some of these roguelike games require so much repetition and leveling up and stuff like that. I thought Dead Cells was pretty cool
too. Really good combat.
Yeah, I think that what was it? One of the first roguelike games that I played was Rogue Legacy. And
yeah, okay, now I did.
Did you play that one at all?
I was actually trying to remember if I had or not. Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked that one because it was basically, for anyone who hasn't played that, every time you play as the descendant of the character that you had played before that died. But what was interesting is that you'd have a different family, like a trait from that's passed along. So it would do really funny stuff like this character is colorblind and the game would be in black and white, or this character is dyslexic and all the words are, the letters are all jumbled up. And sometimes there would be really good ones, like this character is big and beefy, and you'd have like this really big giant character with extra health, or all kinds of silly stuff, which they're doing a second. They're doing Rogue Legacy 2, which I'm really excited to check out. So that one, I feel like it just depends on how much they change it up when you go back to make the run again.
Yeah, that's fair.
So
I don't know what it is. It's just I would say the same thing. Is when I look, I have to because you'll get a lot of people who are like, hey, you want to check out our game, and I always read, and it's like if it says Dark Souls like or roguelike, I always slow down a little bit. I'm like, okay, let's make absolutely sure this is gonna appeal to me, because it feels a lot of times like people just throw those terms in and they don't really even know what even the developers. Well, I've had developers on the channel who didn't even know, they didn't agree on what roguelike and roguelike meant. Light and like. They quite literally didn't agree with each other about what the terms meant. So that means a reviewer, obviously, I'll go with what I know, but it's like if the guys making these games don't even agree, because things are starting to, it's almost like nuo metal, hard rock, and death metal and death dark metal, and you're like, okay, seriously, guys, it's a bunch of dudes screaming.
Right.
But it's cool that we've got them all. It's just, I look at them a little, just a tiny bit closer, and I have to, and I think with Other Side, when I saw that, where it was like, you're taking these characters, as you get hurt, you can't heal, and to heal or to do better, you sacrifice the daughter, and then you to like basically get a better daughter and all that kind of stuff. They're called daughters. They're like, I guess they're angels or something of that effect. It looked cool as an idea, but it just that wheel, man, it starts to feel a little bit like a hamster wheel at some point. I'm like, I don't know if that's really going to be for me.
Well, I've always wondered why there's so many indie games that do the whole roguelike thing. I'm like, is that a way? I feel like there's no way that it's easier to develop a roguelike game, but it does make it easier to maybe make more content out of what you've established. So I don't know. I mean, I've always wondered about that, because there does seem to be an explosion of them. I think it's maybe started to die down a little bit. It does feel like it has died down a little bit. Yeah, but it does. Yeah. I'm surprised you said it got good reviews. It looks like IGN,
which
9 out of 10. PlayStation Universe,
at least from what I saw, it was getting really good reviews. Yeah, because that's where you get a review code, you're reviewing, your review comes out, and then you're looking at the other games that came out, and I don't ever feel like wasted time, but because I don't think my time was wasted with Destroy All Humans at all. But it's like you do see those reviews and you're like, damn, like, you know, because it is a hamster wheel for us too. So getting to those games is very difficult. You have to parse out. It's like, you know, and the problem with that game is like, if I would want to play it on my own personally, then I look at what it is and I'm like, I don't know, you know, because sometimes it's great reviewing because you are playing a game you may not have chosen instantly to cover, and when you do, you're like, well, thank God I chose this, because I don't think I would have played Oxenfree, which is one of my favorite games of all time. I don't think I would have probably chosen to play Oxenfree unless I was reviewing. And even though I like point and click, it just, what I heard wasn't for me, and instead, you know, it was a blessing in disguise kind of thing. So it was very cool. Do you have any of those? Is there any title that you've covered for anything that you're like, man, I would not have picked this on my own?
Yeah, this was a few years ago. It was real controversial, and that's why I wanted to check it out. Was that game Agony?
Oh, I definitely do. Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I know.
Not good. Real bad. And that was one that I like just was like banging my head against the desk. Like, I don't even know how I can play this game all the way through. Like, I don't know what to do. So yeah,
so it goes both ways.
It wasn't very good, but
you have a good experience and a bad.
Yeah.
So other side is Focus Home Interactive. You guys can check that out. It is not on Game Pass from what I've seen. It looks like that's a full purchase, but again, getting really good reviews. So even though we haven't got a chance to check it out, you did though in your preview. You said, was that a couple of months ago?
Yeah. That was, so I actually wasn't even the one playing it. I just did the edit. So I was watching the gameplay and stuff, but I remember them talking about the sacrificing daughters and stuff. It sounds real dark, which is cool to me.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out if I get like some kind of open time. Moving on from there, let's go to a rumor. Well, it's a rumor. We'll call it a rumor.
Ooh.
But it's sort of not a rumor.
Okay.
And that is Jeffrey Grubb, whose Twitter I follow. He's one of the, you know, professional journalists, as they call them in the current industry, has stated that he's got word that Xbox Live, the actual payment for playing online multiplayer, is going away, and that we will be left with a Game Pass / Game Pass, games with gold kind of mix. That's one thing I want to talk about too, because games with gold is technically separate. And so it's like, how would all this occur? But first of all, do we both agree that we think like the paid for multiplayer is going to go away? Where you have to pay to play multiplayer on the console?
I feel like it makes sense for Microsoft in particular. This is the weird thing now is that because they're so focused on having both the Xbox and the PC as a platform, right? It doesn't make sense. I mean, honestly, it never made sense.
It never made sense. We did it, but it never made sense. Right.
Right. But now it's like they, you know, at least back then you could be like, well, they have, you know, servers for the consoles that are separate. I don't know, they could make up whatever reason. But now that especially we're in a cross-play world and that they're focused so much on play where you want, it just doesn't make sense for them to try to charge people for that. And I think they're probably getting so much revenue from Game Pass now that they're seeing like, well, if we remove this, it's going to be awesome PR for them, especially because Sony, I mean, you have to assume that they're going to keep PS Plus as a required thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about this, right?
Yeah,
I think like you said, everybody's day one, we all bought into it just because it was like, well, it's console, it's a different system. They lied, said they had to build a bunch of new stuff, so we have to pay. What was it, $5 when it started? $5 a month, I think, to play online. But then you'd see online free-to-play games. Sony, in particular, was okay with them being played for free, and Microsoft for a while wasn't. They were like, you still have to pay, you know, to play these games. It just makes sense for Microsoft to be like, fuck, let's cut it all down to one thing. Because the same thing happens right now. People don't remember that if you have an Xbox and you have a PC, currently right now, their subscriptions are also separate. You have like PC, you have like your Xbox Game Pass, and then you've got this PC Ultimate thing. And Microsoft has already stated streaming's going for free into the package. So it seems to me, makes sense. Grab everything. Just say it's all one. If you have a PC or an Xbox, it's all just going to be one thing. It's just going to be some kind of subscription.
Right.
I'm assuming without the purchase of the console, I'm assuming we're $9.99, or are we thinking $15.99? Like, so let's say you do merge all this. Let's say you merge everything. What do you think that'll be? If like, do you think they'll raise the price, or do you think they'll just like, what would they do with that?
I'm trying to think of the current pricing model, because it's Game Pass Ultimate, which includes the console Game Pass, the PC Game Pass, and Xbox Live Gold, is
so $14.99
a month, I believe.
I think it is $9.99 if you just have an Xbox.
Right. Yeah. But I think that that doesn't include gold.
Right. Oh, that's so confusing.
This is the problem. This is the problem here, is that there's so many different, like, levels, and that might be part of the thing, is that they're like, well, we're making this, we have so many people subscribe with Game Pass. We can push maybe more people towards Game Pass because we're charging them for Xbox Live Gold, and we don't really need to.
So I found it. Consoles $9.99. This is official. I'm sure you can get deals somewhere, but consoles $9.99 a month. PC, just PC, is first month $1, then $4 a month. That says limited time, but it doesn't say when that comes out. Then you have Ultimate, which is both of those plus gold, and that'll be $14 a month. So, which you're really technically $9.99, $4.99. You're really not saving anything by doing Ultimate. It just makes everything easier by putting everything into one. So yeah, I guess they probably won't do anything with the price. It'll just be, well, see, that's the thing. If you have just a console, are they going to say you were paying $9.99, but because we're mixing Game Pass into all this, it'll be $14.99?
Right. Maybe it's a situation where in September, when they add xCloud, that they're like, hey, we're adding xCloud as part of Game Pass Ultimate for $14.99, and we're making it so gold is now free. So it's almost like, you're the exchange of the value there.
Yeah, there's going to be an uproar. I don't know if you have a lot of friends who did this, but I have a lot of my friends who did the $1 exchange thing for the Xbox Live, the deal.
Oh,
and one of my friends was like, man, I hope they don't raise the price. And no lie, I was sitting there in the room with him. This is pre-COVID, basically, and was just looking at him going like, you seriously just said that out loud? Like, you hope they don't raise the price of like 400 free games to $4.99 or $9.99. You're like nervous that your $1 a month deal is going to go away. Like, what? Where are we? And I was talking about this. I was like, if they keep it too long at a low price, that will it doesn't matter. The consumer will say, why? Why are you raising it? It was fine. It was obviously fine for 9 months. Why is it now not fine? So I think these steps are probably the best bet. Roll the new console into it, because I'm also assuming we already have a payment plan for the Xbox X. I think you can do it with the original as well, where you add a little bit of money into that. I'm assuming they're going to try to make, the Series X be as cheap as possible in a cohesive thing too. I don't know what that price will be. $30, I assume. $29, $99 get you an Xbox X Series or Series X. But
yeah, man. I mean, I'm really intrigued by those. Like, it's almost like I guess it's sort of a payment plan. It's kind of like modeled like a phone payment almost, but it's like, you subscribe and you get Xbox Live Gold and Game Pass. Well, maybe not Gold when this happens, but you get Game Pass and all this different stuff. I just know if I was a kid still and didn't have a ton of money, but I knew I had like a set monthly income from either like allowance or stuff like that, that would have been awesome.
With that many games
to be like, man, for this amount. Yeah, it's like I can get a new console and get the games. You know what I mean? Like, it would have been sweet.
I mean, it's going to be really weird to see how the pricing goes for these. Like, and who goes for what, and then how the economy. We talked about this in the last podcast, but like how the economy goes. But, this is, again, Jeffrey Grubb is saying this. Somebody asked him the question, and he was like, he had heard that this was going away. I think we all expected this because last week, I think, was when they did say they were removing they removed the yearly price, I think, for Xbox subscription, or they removed the month. Yeah, they removed the yearly. You couldn't buy it yearly anymore, and people were like, "Why did that go away?" So it was like a step in this direction of saying, like, we're going to merge some things. But I think it's confusing. You and I should know this, and we even had confusion on what's gold versus what's ultimate versus. So it's time, right? It's time to consolidate these. So hopefully it happens. What were we going to say? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's interesting just because I got Xbox Live Gold when Halo 2 came out, and it's funny, I had that service for, I think I had the badge that said 10 years for so many years, and then eventually during the PS4, when the generation switch over, around then is when I stopped. I didn't have it anymore. So it's interesting. I mean, obviously the service is still going to exist. It's just not going to be quite the same. So it's interesting. I remember getting that Xbox Live Gold box that had the headset and like the disc and it's very nostalgic.
I mean, especially as we move into this, they're going to have to make sure that it makes sense for people who are in a post-illness phase of the economy, purchasing these things, getting them. And I think the more ability for people to, even if you're a Sony fan, hopefully they do the same thing with their pricing. I don't mean monthly. I just mean make it a price that people can swallow, because we're coming into a time where I don't think people realize you and I may have a job because we have weird jobs anyway. And you do two or three technically. Now you're here, you also do call-in stuff, and you do your own. And I do too. But a lot of people aren't working at all. I mean, at all. And there's no future within the next couple months where they are. And so I think the best bet is these companies, if they want you to buy, they're going to have to make it really worth it. Like, maybe this is your only thing you get in winter. 400 games or something might be the thing. It might be the thing that turns some people. I don't know. We'll have to see. Because Sony fans have a tendency to be like, well, there'll be exclusives at some point, so I'm going to buy it now. So it'll be, how do you buy into that? And then you have other nations too. Japan, Xbox sells like what, one system in Japan a month? Dude, it's crazy. Can you imagine? I have a friend who's in our Discord. He's like the only guy he knows in the entire place. He lives in Japan. He's the only dude he knows that has an Xbox in Japan. He's like, I don't know anybody. Anybody I've talked to, no one owns one. It's just him. It's like a collector's item. Moving on from there, let's talk a little bit about Grounded. So this is also connected. Grounded is the survival Honey, I Shrunk the Kids game, I guess is what we call it, from Obsidian. And Microsoft released on Game Pass. Was that yesterday? Or was that... No, this week. Released on Game Pass this week. I can't remember exactly what day. And it's very short, by the way, for anybody who do download this. Story-wise, very short. I think somebody was already at the end of the story content 15 minutes in. It's more of here's a early access. It's an early access kind of situation. They've already had 1 million people in like 1 or 2 days playing this. And to me, that's astonishing just because... Well, and you've played it. Actually, I'll let you go first, and then I'll tell you what I thought. But you played it at least for a small amount of time. What did you think for the small amount of time you played it?
Right. It's unique for sure. It's weird because crafting games seem to be hugely popular, especially amongst kids. Like, I don't know if it's just like a Minecraft, that kind of bleeds that genre into what a lot of kids like. Like, I know that my one little cousin is like, they love Rust is popular. One of the big other survival games. And I've played a few of them here and there. Like I've played Minecraft, and I played a good bit of No Man's Sky, and I think Astroneers was another one that I checked out. And I don't know, I'm not super big on these survival games. What I liked about what I played with Grounded was I just liked the unique aspect of being, the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids element of being, this tiny little, person amongst bugs. And man, even it was so interesting because even in the 20 to 30 minutes that I was checking it out earlier today, I was like, man, I feel like I've had a lot of unique experiences just within that 30 minutes where it's like, I got attacked by a spider, which was fucking horrifying. And there was like, I was by this pond and there was gnats, and then I went inside a pop can. And so I feel like initially when I had saw that it was like, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I was like, oh, it's kind of cool. But then actually playing it, it's like, oh, this actually has a lot of interesting gameplay elements. Like I was chopping down some grass, and I was checking out some of the crafting recipes too. So, but you had said, so it's really short then, the story content.
That's
someone
very
blitzed
short.
it in 15 minutes.
If you follow like the point to point,
Wow.
it's like it's just over, and they're like, thanks. But luckily they keep you playing because it is a early access survival game. I think the issue that a lot of people are coming up against is that every game is an early access survival game. Every survival game is an early access game,
Right.
and what happens is all you are doing in every one of them is crafting a spear. It doesn't matter if they change the look. At some point, they all fall back on the crafting part and not the other parts. And what we were saying is this is a unique narrative. It would have been nice if they had fallen back on the story part. Now, that's very difficult. You had even said, is the repetition of like a roguelike game there so that they can get more content or appear to have more content in something. I think with these kind of games, that's what they do, is with this type of game in particular, survival games, they're like, we're going to put some crafting materials out there and have some unique combinations. So that feels like a ton of content when really there's not a ton. I think this anti-spider setting was awesome. I don't know if you saw that. But you can go in there and you can turn them into like just two colored blobs. If you turn it down,
Really?
The spider becomes nothing more than a head and an abdomen that are just cylindrical with like glass eyes. It looks like a toy. It doesn't look like a spider.
Yeah. I was curious about that because I was like, does it just get rid of them?
Right.
But how does that work from a gameplay? So I meant to
so it
actually
doesn't
try
get rid
that,
of them.
but
It leaves their collision boxes
that's
and everything.
interesting.
It just turns them into blobs. Now, what was weird is I told the guy playing, I was like, dude, that might be more frightening to me at 3 a.m. in the morning, with this glowing blob chasing me. But for people who don't like spiders, and there was a couple times where he got attacked, I was like, oh man, that's crazy. Like, that's pretty gnarly. A lot of humans that's not for them. It's very cool that they did it. A million people though, dude, like 1 million people, that's better than, I think they were saying it's better than, if not all, at least most of Xbox's, the day one numbers. And I know it beats State of Decay 2, which was also stunningly good. It was like, I think it was 2 million in 3 days. So, I mean, it's doing well. I just don't know what's there for me.
That's like, I guess maybe it shouldn't be a shocking success to us because other survival games, I'm thinking specifically of The Forest. That's on the PSN bestseller list, like almost, I don't know if it's every month, but regularly it's one of the best sellers. And I'm like, I remember when this game came out, but I haven't been following it or seen anyone in my circles playing it, but apparently it's,
7
huge.
Days to Die.
So, and I'm looking at the Steam top charts for survival games, like Don't Starve is number 2 still. And that game came out, it's Don't Starve Together, so that's the co-op version. Ark is still in there, 7 Days to Die.
Is this
Terraria,
one number 1?
Obviously huge. It's not anymore. I remember it was. It is. It is on number 5 currently. So, but yeah. So, man, I don't know. I feel like there's certain times with like video games whether it's specifically for me like esports and survival games that are like huge parts of the industry.
They're a mystery.
I'm just kind of like I know about these games and I play them every once in a while, but I don't. It's just they always surprise me. Now that I'm on the Steam main page, it's the top selling.
Yeah.
Like it's number 1 under top seller. So I don't know what's going on with the Steam pages.
But earlier today when we were talking on the podcast, I'm pretty sure they looked and it was number 1. And I was just like, what the hell? I agree with you. I think that it makes, they have a longevity to them that makes sense. I think that I can't complain about it. I mean, it's amazing that it did that. It's just, I guess it also maybe shows that other than your third person, Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, big titles, right? Horizon Zero Dawn's coming out. If you don't have those big games, maybe some other genres are not being fed. And maybe there hasn't been a survival game for a while. And because I don't follow them as much. I follow some of them, but I don't follow them as much. So maybe it's also just, there's people, who see those and they've been waiting for a long time to play it. I will say, without a shadow of a doubt, though, first seeing it, it did intrigue me. The Honey Who Shrunk the Kids, that is intriguing. There isn't another one that's like that. So, that can certainly pay off on its own. Did you ever play the shooter that came out about 2 months ago that was Hyperbox, I think is what it was called, where it was like Unreal Tournament, Hyperbox. But you were actually toys in a toy store?
I think I covered it heard
in a
of that
top 10 video like 2 months ago. And it was another shrunk, right? Like, perspective. And I got to admit, it was fun and it was more enjoyable because of that perspective. So maybe that's where these, where these see their excitement coming from. I think with survival also, maybe it's the time frame. People are at home. There's not a lot to do, and there's no rigmarole or expectation for a lot of these other than staying safe. You're just sort of like, building, and Minecraft, I'm sure, is probably doing really well right now. I didn't check.
Man,
did you hear about Spotify? I think Spotify yesterday announced that like listening numbers are back up to where they were prior, which I thought they'd be higher, but I guess what they said was they dropped because people were just in, like, the world was in a panic and they weren't listening. And now it's back to that level, which to me just feels like it's just going to go higher, So.
Right. Yeah. I'm wondering too of specifically with Minecraft, because I feel like that's probably like a comfort game for people. Because I know even some of my friends that we played before it came out, they're actually diving back in and playing it now. And so I don't know. For me, man, Minecraft is special. It's weird because I keep saying I'm not really into these survival games, but every few years I will like start playing Minecraft again, and I'm like,
I don't even know how to describe to you what Minecraft did, because I told my friend who's in our Discord continually was like, "This is you should play this." And I'm like, "That is the dumbest idea for a game I've ever heard of, and I don't want to play it." And one day, late at night, I randomly got it, and I don't even know why I did. And we're talking 2 years after it released, and I got it, and I watched the entire series of Friends in a row. Every night I would come home and I would just turn on Friends and just play Minecraft. And I was just like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
This is, every hill was some new cool looking thing. And I don't think I ever built anything good. I think, I'm not lying, I think the best house I built maybe was wood. The rest of it was just exploring. I was just like, I'm going here, I'm going there. There's something about Minecraft in particular that just, there's so much you can do in that game.
Yeah, man, I have so many memories of playing that game multiplayer. And we like sometimes creative mode I actually had a ton of fun with, just not having to worry about resources. But that game is so full of the like, it feels like it has a story in a way, just from the gameplay creates stories between you and your friends, that it's like, I can remember a moment that we had in Minecraft 6 years ago, because what happened was so memorable just from the gameplay. And I wonder if that's something that draws people to survival games. And I wonder if Grounded kind of can do that same thing.
It's a good point. Also, childlike. Yeah. That's why I was bringing up the shooter. I think for me, Toy Commander for the Dreamcast is the same way. I like toys. I just, and toy, what was it? Toy Mint, what was it called? Not Toy Soldiers. Yeah, the war. Yeah, I owned all those.
Toy Soldiers.
I still own them, actually. They're installed now that I think about it. And anything that does focus on that, I do like. So the idea, when you said the idea of a pop can, I think you said you walked into a pop can. I'm like, oh, actually, that sort of speaks to me. As when you were a young kid thinking, what if there's a real world smaller than us? That speaks to me. I could definitely see that being a thing. But yeah, it's cool, man. 1 million. I guess, hey, we can't, you won't hear me. I think it's awesome they're doing well. I'll just say that this is one of the surprises for me, because when I saw the numbers, I did a double take. And I was like, what?
I have to admit, when they announced this, I was like, "Oh, we have another Microsoft studio doing a side project that's going to go nowhere,
did the
like
same.
Bleeding Edge."
Correct.
And it seems
Right.
to be the complete opposite of Bleeding Edge, where it's a huge. Is Bleeding Edge? It's funny because that game came out and then just
And it got a new
disappeared.
character yesterday. I only know because I
Really?
hadn't heard of it,
Okay,
and then it popped up yesterday in the news.
Yeah. I wonder
It's
what the
gotta
player
be-
count is like
Dude,
on that game.
it's got to be dump. It's got, and that's the thing is, I don't. One of the reasons why I brought up Grounded and wanted to talk about it a little bit is I'm not a big fan of these type of games because I don't want companies resting on their laurels and saying let's just throw out 10 games with barely anything and see which one. I was not a fan of how Sea of Thieves worked out. Even though I'm glad Sea of Thieves worked out, I don't want a company just aiming for that. And State of Decay, too,
Right.
while I liked it, it certainly could have been shored up in 100 different ways before it was released, and yet it's doing insanely well enough that they've moved to a third. I think Obsidian's slightly different because they're so small. It sounded like what did they say? 10 people are working on this, or it was small. It was like maybe it was 16, but yeah, it was like
Right,
the small team
team.
working on it. But I agree with you. I literally thought of Bleeding Edge when they I was like, oh, that's what this is.
Yeah.
It's like somebody's got a side idea. And I mean, it also depends on how many people buy it and how they do their customizations. Now that I think about it, I don't know what the microtransactions are in that game. I didn't see a store. So,
Yeah, for sure.
you know, if they turn out to be something that people just organically go into, Obsidian's in the money, you know, like they just are, you know, so.
Yeah. That's the one thing you just said that I totally agree with is that, and I think about this specifically with music, is that there are bands that, you know, I love that when they come out with a new album, I always think, you know what, they're doing something different. Even if I don't like it,
Yeah, right.
I always appreciate it. I always respect it. And it's the same thing with games too. Like you said, with Obsidian trying something different. And even with Bleeding Edge, I think it's cool that they did it. Even though it's not a great result, I always will respect.
Yeah, I covered
new
Bleeding Edge
things.
on purpose because of that. Because I didn't think it was probably going to go anywhere, but I absolutely have no issues with, like, and you know, the developers, we always joke about it and everything, but a lot of those guys are just, I mean, they're like everybody else. They want to make a good game. They didn't wake up and say, let's make a shitty game. You know, they're like, hey, let's make something and see if it works. And, you know, that one didn't. This one seems to have worked. But yeah, I'm always for at least checking it out because you never know. And games like this will surprise you. And now you just need to chalk that up and be like, next time you think this game is going to do amazing or this game is going to do horrible, remember a game like Grounded, for me at least, where I was like, nah, nobody will play it. You know, and it turns out really well, at least for now.
Yeah. Speaking of developers that have done two totally different things, hopefully I'm not taking the wrong direction, but I was thinking, I just thought of this today, was the dev that did Plague Tale
Love that game.
Innocence. When I did not realize that they also were working on Microsoft Flight Simulator.
Is that bizarre?
That's so
bizarre?
crazy. It's awesome. I think it's sweet.
No, dude, they are like, I don't even know how to describe how much I like that game. Like, that game came out of nowhere, and I'm such a big fan of games that don't overstay. Like, they're, you know, it's like, here's this contained thing, like Outer Worlds. I love that it was contained. It wasn't a huge, I mean, I get that everybody wanted Fallout 3.5 or whatever, but to me, I was like, no, I'm actually okay with this.
Right.
So, yeah, you see that weird, it's like, yeah, man, we're doing this game, you know, a kid in France and possibly psychic powers, and we're also doing Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is like the biggest, most technically advanced game ever. Actually, we can move to that because we can talk about,
That's what I was saying. Hopefully you're going there next.
So
perfect
Microsoft
transition.
Flight Simulator's coming out here very soon, in the last couple days. If you guys are following, anybody here who's following Twitter, you probably saw maybe a journalist or two post their pictures. Microsoft sent them like the fucking full Monty. They sent them like, full sticks and rudders and all this crazy stuff for them to test it. I got a code. I did not get any of that stuff, nor would I want that kind of stuff. Well, I don't have room for. I've got room for a joystick, but not, shit hanging off the walls.
Right. You're not ready to play Steel Battalion
no, probably
in your room.
not. But It was fun.
I always wanted to play
that. To
that.
be honest, it was fun. And that, by the way, that controller does work as a USB device in a PC. So a lot of people buy buy it to play other games because you can. It's a generic USB device.
Yeah.
So Asobo's doing this. I did get a chance. I did check with Microsoft before the podcast to verify I can talk about, what I'm going to talk about. But I got a chance to spend about 8 hours with it. I want to say first, hats off to them, because what they did was they have a bandwidth section of their options. First, you can,
I saw
it's
that
so
in the
great.
Digital
You can
Foundry
turn
video.
it off,
Yeah.
which is awesome, and just play
That's
with
interesting.
the assets you get. But you can also throttle it, and you can also cap it. So if somebody has a 1 terabyte, which isn't unlikely in America, 1 terabyte is considered a lot. But you could say 500 gigabytes and then still leave yourself 500 for the month. And so it's got all these settings, all this stuff. And I got to say, I won't get into a bunch of stuff because this is the preview. The review code, goes live in a couple days. But it's as good looking as the videos show. Like, it's pretty crazy. It's pretty stupid. Like, I was just playing it going like, and I have a powerful PC, but I also tested it on the mid-range PC. And I was like, dude, this is... I've always been a fan of simulators, but they've always been very resource heavy. They're always very hard on your PC. And in fact, most don't run well enough so that you always feel like you're upgrading for a simulator. That's how I've always felt, whether it be like the Flight X11 or anything like that. But man, dude, it's awesome. Like, insane.
I appreciate that too. I feel like so many developers now will spec their max settings to 2080 Ti or and it leaves it no room to grow once future hardware comes out. So I think in the Digital Foundry video they had a 3900X with a 2080 Ti at 4K, and it wasn't. It was like 30-ish. So I always like that because it's like, man, this game is going to grow, and obviously that's the design. And with a game like this, the fans around it know it's not like people are going to be like, oh, this game's unoptimized. You know what I mean? Have you seen people do that?
I don't know if you heard me and Maddie talking about this, but I actually stated anytime you have an ultra setting in your PC and you are future-proofing, you need to have them sign an NDA mark, like where it says, I will not report this as unoptimized if I'm trying to run it on this card or below, because you literally don't have that hardware. And you'll see reviewers will do it. I've seen pretty big reviewers be like, oh man, it doesn't run well, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, dude, you're on Ultra. They don't even have that setting on a card. Like, and it states it. But yeah, I've seen that a lot. It really needs to stop. It is.
It's so annoying. Yeah.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, and a side note also, and because you mentioned this in your videos, and I always appreciate this, that I can't stand when I've seen people talk about previews and they talk about technical aspects and frame rates. Like at PAX, I've seen PAX previews where people are like, well, the frame rate wasn't very good. I'm like, we're at a show. Like, this is a preview build that may be 6 months old or something. Like, why even mention that in the preview? So, unrelated.
It's very important one. And that's even why, like for me, seeing how it runs now versus how it'll run on review time frame is going to be interesting. But it's cool because we have a game that personally probably won't light the fire of 80% of gamers. Probably. I mean, being fair, 80% are not going to want to fly, but it normally would be 75% or 85%, sorry, but there's a 5% there who see a game that looks so beautiful that they think flying might be fun for the first time ever in a game. And I got to tell you, that is the group that I think will freak. I honestly believe the other percent, like myself, are going to be very excited to have a game made for them. But there is a 5% of people that I have seen in my own Discord going like, dude, I don't even like flight simulator games, and I'm buying a joystick right now. Like, what is going on? Like, there's a part where they fly in one of the commercials and there's like birds under them, like flamingos, I think, in Florida. And people are just like, is that fucking in the game? If that's in the game, and it's in the game. It's just like, it's there. No, it's there. It's just like, that to me is this really cool time where we, like, you'll see I personally believe, at least from what I've seen in some areas, a game that looks next gen for the first time ever. Like, and I don't mean, we're using the term next gen, which I don't like because PC's already all gens. But you know what I mean? It's like the first title where I've had hands-on been like, wow, like, damn, that's pure insanity. I mean, you're right, though, 30 frames per second, pure insanity. You're going to need, you're going to have to turn some shit down. That's for sure.
Right. So here, I have a question about this game because I've heard about this game for a while, and I remember my friend telling me that his dad would play it, and he would always laugh at him because he would basically like play and like take the plane. He would fly like a commercial plane, and then he would just kind of like sit in front of the screen for 3 or 4 hours while it flew. And I'm like, surely there's more to this game, than that. So what is for you? What is a typical play session of Microsoft Flight Simulator? Because I honestly have no clue. I mean, I've seen the videos and like it looks stunning, and there's so many different planes and the instruments, but like I from the video I watched, I'm like, I still don't really know what playing this game is even like.
So it's not like I'm a big fan of Euro Truck Simulator and Snow Runner. Those are also slightly sim, but Euro Truck, you're dodging traffic, right? You're trying to get a delivery somewhere, so it's a little bit more condensed in its action. What goes on with planes, dude, is strangely enough, this is going to sound weird, it's usually weather, and it's ground effect, and it's flying over a mountain and having to adjust trim. And this sounds really dumb, but I didn't even have a passenger in this plane last night, and I was trying to make it as smooth as possible for myself. Like that's the kind of person who might like this, where I was like, oh, I don't want to like fucking do this, because if somebody was in the plane, they'd be like, man, you're shitty. And I'm in a Cessna, right? Well, I'm not a Cessna. I was in like one of the jet engine, very small, but I was like trying to get it just right. I think getting it just right, smooth, those kind of things are what people like. And then exploring in a game like this is awesome because they're real places. So I'm from Oregon, so I took off from Portland. I took off from Washington, Tacoma. I took off from San Francisco, all places I had been, and Honolulu. And no, not Honolulu, sorry. That's the next one I'm going to. And all of them looked like where I had just been. And that exploration, I think, is very, it feels real. But again, that's why I said 85%. 80 to 80. Most gamers, 20% of gamers will be into this. Maybe it would have been 15, but like I said, I think this gains at minimum 5% more, because somebody who maybe they're a GT fan, Gran Turismo, maybe they've done a little bit of sim, maybe a Euro Truck Simulator has been slightly interesting. They see a game that looks like this, and maybe they think, I did buy a good graphics card, but I don't really have anything that requires it. Maybe, or I'm getting an Xbox X Series, and this is the first one. Because I don't know if I told you this, but I was surprised how many people play Elite on the Xbox. Now, Elite is nuts. Yeah. I play Elite, and they're on a controller, dude, and they're like full. The game is full on the Xbox, by the way. Like, all the upgrades are there, all of the expansions. So if they're doing that, I assume they'll do a playing game, and it won't have an issue.
Right. Yeah, that's one that people said is hard to play in VR because of playing on a controller, I've heard.
I was okay. I use voice attack, though. So I have a joystick, HOTAS, and then I use voice attack. William Shatner, by the way. Shout out to William. He does, because you can buy voice packs. And I use William Shatner and Brett Spiner, Data from Star Trek. And both of those guys. And
nice.
Yeah, you without voice attack, you can certainly do it. I've seen many people not use voice attack. I just had to use it because too many buttons. Yeah, and you can't see your keyboard, so you have to memorize and so being able to say lower, your fucking like drop your landing gear without having to push G, Control, Alt is always easier. But yeah, dude, people are doing it on the console. What were you gonna say?
Yeah. Speaking of VR, I think you put in our Discord about this game is going to have VR support.
This is weird, and this is why I'm so confused on VR with Microsoft. WMR is Microsoft, and yet when Asobo announced this and when Microsoft showed it, They said they had no plans for VR because they assumed no one would want it. And so it took them 2 months of having the trailers be out, and then PC Gamer said, seriously, VR or not? And then Microsoft said, okay, we now understand you want it, so we're looking into it. And then as of yesterday or whatever, they stated it will have VR after launch, but it will be VR. I don't know, dude. Right.
Such a weird thing to say. Like, Microsoft with VR, you're right, has been weird since that was a big thing before this, the Xbox One X. They were like, this will be a VR console. And then they're like, yeah, never mind. Which surely Microsoft has the, the research data that they said, now's not the time to invest in VR. Maybe they thought that it was waning, but I never know what the state of VR is, because you get the hit pieces, not a hit piece, but you have people writing like, yeah, VR is dead, VR is not succeeding, blah, blah, blah. But then also the Oculus Quest is literally sold out constantly, which there is probably, and there has been, shortages due to a million different reasons right now going on in 2020. But even then, still, like, people are buying up these headsets like crazy. I don't know if it's just we've hit the right point where we're past the early new technology, early adopter phase, and we're starting to see people interested in the consumer product of something more one-off like the Oculus Quest, or if people's PCs are just, it's cheaper now to have a PC that's VR capable than it was when it came out. And I mean, I guess the headsets too in general, I mean, obviously the Valve Index is the high end at $1,000, but you can get an Oculus Rift S for $399 right now. And then there's this other one that we were talking about before we started rolling, the HP Reverb, the new one. What does that one start at?
Which is $150 cheaper than it was. It's $499 or $599, but it's $150 cheaper than what I bought my G1 for, my Reverb G1. And then WMR right now is about $99 to $150 off of eBay or Amazon. And WMR has higher resolution than the Rifts. So like, they use a different style of tracking, so a lot of people don't like them. But I think what happens with like Microsoft Flight Simulator, I don't know why they didn't know. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I don't know how that decision was made. But as long as they finally realized, hey, people would want it, I would assume you and I, as PC gamers, we'd be like, dude, it's a PC sim title. Why wouldn't you do it? Maybe they didn't want to do it because it was also going to be on the Xbox. And they were like, they know that currently you can't take a WMR, which is Microsoft's actual form factor, and plug it in. And maybe they have to now say, well, we're going to have to build a branch of our development just to handle VR. But I think it makes sense. This is the game that you would want for VR. It's the game that you would be able to sell people and be like, dude, do you want to be in the cockpit? This is the game, that allows you to do that. And we'll talk about VR in a bit, but like, if you do hit those, anybody who's done VR, like when it does hit, it hits, and you're just like, oh my God, this is insanity. It's just that without support of a Microsoft and Flight Sim and this kind of stuff, we won't notice that as often. So I'm glad they're doing it. And yeah, it looks fantastic, man. It's going to be interesting to see how the volumetric clouds. Yeah, it's dude, it's so weird to see the buildings though, and cars driving. It's so weird because I had everything cranked. I was like, fuck it, man. If I get 15 frames per second, screw it.
Right.
Which, by the way, it was like 25. But I have a more powerful computer, weirdly enough, than Digital Foundry. But I turned down, there's a couple settings you automatically know, like shadows and renders and stuff like that, where you can get it playable very quickly. And these are types of games where 60 FPS is what you want, but like 45 isn't going to magically make you miss a input leg frame on fucking Rue in a Street Fighter game. And it was crazy to take off from like an airport I took off from less than 2 months ago and be like, that's the tower. Like, that's weird. Like, it looks right. And cars driving around on the roads, just pretty insane. It's all Google data. They've taken all the Google data to do this.
Right. That's what I was wondering, because like me living in a small town near Pittsburgh, I'm like, how detailed is my hometown is I guess it would just be depend on the satellite image data.
From what I understand, what Microsoft is doing, limited knowledge here, but when I read up on the GDC data, what they're doing is taking Google, they're taking all of the stuff on Google and they're sort of condensing it. So like if your house is an A-frame 1970s white house, they might have that as a generic, and they're like, we can put your house in there, no issues. But then somebody has like a double A frame that's like purple and it's got, you know, some additions, they may have to generic that to one of their hundreds of sets, and they use like a builder that sort of builds those out and puts those in places. But I did have somebody say that their house is in it. So I don't know, and I haven't checked my house. It will be the first thing I will do today. That is quite literally is I'm going to try to get to my house, but it's quite a big flight from where, like from my home when I was a child. I'm going to try to find that.
Right.
But you know what? Even if they come close, I think, you know, knowing this stuff's updated, you can turn the real weather on and off, which was cool. So you can because it was sunny and I was like, yeah, you know, because it's pretty nice outside right now. I don't know where you are, but it's hot as where I am. And it's super clear.
Yeah,
oh, dude,
it's rainy and nasty here.
I would trade with you. It's so nasty here, heat-wise, and but you could adjust all that and turn it off if you wanted to. So, yeah, it's cool, man. I mean, it's I think we're getting into this point where people are buying 2080 Ti's and all this shit, and the only thing you can say is I can run Crysis at 60 FPS. You know, there's some games, but you know, overall there isn't that title that you're like, oh my god. And I think this one for a lot of people will be the one that people are really happy about. So.
Right. Yeah, and especially with the new cards coming. I mean, hopefully next month is at least the announcement.
Are you like a day one kind of person?
So I don't know, because I actually let's see, last year was when I built my gaming PC, and now that I actually have a lot more disposable income than I can dump into a PC, now it's like, so I currently have just a 2080. Not the TI, just the regular 2080. I got it because Staples.com had a price error that it was like $400-ish bucks, which was awesome because they're normally retail like 600, 7. The prices are all over the place. So I think that I will probably, depending on the resale market, I will probably get one just because I'm an idiot and I'll just spend my money on, like, it's totally not necessary for me.
It is nice for rendering,
to upgrade,
though,
but
you know, or those kind of stuff, editing and rendering.
Yeah, that is true. Right. Yeah, it will give me a little boost on the editing aspect, but I really want the new HDMI 2.1 port. So because my work / gaming PC, which is, you know, one and the same, is upstairs in my office, and my OLED TV is unfortunately downstairs. So because I am so like, there's no way that I'm going to stream my gaming PC to my TV. I know people do that with like the NVIDIA. It's never good enough for me. There's always like a little bit of compression, so I'll literally carry down my tower like over on the weekends and stuff. So but yeah, I really just want the idea of playing at 4K 120. Not all
being
games and stuff like that, but sounds.
People don't realize HDMI 2.1. We won't
get
to. I know Maddie's fans are probably not as like into nerd shit like I am, but 2.1 is a huge jump, and I don't think people realize that. Like 2.1 is what's allowing like the Xbox to do half of the special stuff that for whatever reason doesn't look like the PlayStation 5 is going to be doing, but maybe variable refresh rate, we'll see. But I didn't really see that show up on Sony stuff. But even if they do, regardless, that's what's awesome is like you'll have these kind of things. The higher, you know, much higher FPS is even possible on that. And hopefully it'll also cause a few less issues with some of the handshake problems we get with low bandwidth HDMI stuff. Because I don't know about you, but I have those issues. I actually do when I'm sorting and trying to record, I will get the, you know, no signal, and you're just like, no, there's a fucking signal. I know there's a signal. I'm holding the goddamn, you know what I mean? Yeah. You're just like, you have to spend 10 minutes trying to figure that shit out. So, yeah, it's very cool. I think it depends on the price for me. Right? Like,
Yo, hey, Karak, I got to throw you a variable real quick because I just saw this. Important news dropped while we were recording. From the Halo Twitter. Halo is for everyone. We can confirm Halo Infinite multiplayer will be free to play and will support 120 FPS on Xbox Series X.
frames per second?
So that's what it says from the Halo Twitter account.
What the
for multiplayer?
But it says 120 FPS on the Xbox Series X.
What it says. Will support 120
FPS let's talk
on
about
Xbox Series
just
X.
real quick, and then we'll move on to the other stuff we normally have playing. So that's pretty good news for sure. And I think that free to play, obviously Microsoft's doing something. They wouldn't have said that if all of these other adjustments were seen about like costs of the packaging. I'm assuming they're gonna announce very quickly that you don't have to pay to be online, obviously, because why else would they mention that?
Right.
But so 120. Here's the thing that I'm wondering, dude. So Sony does certainly have the IPs for proprietary games. The problem is of course not all 8 or 10 amazing ones are going to be available day one. And so, but they're gonna try to get you some awesome games so you want to get a PS5. It seems to me, and I could be wrong on this, but it seems to me that Microsoft has slightly gone away from, well, they for sure are saying they're the most powerful, but if you've noticed, this is like the 4th announcement in the last couple days where they start mentioning the FPS. And I am wondering, because your hard drive, no matter how fast it is, it can't like make shit, it can't increase your FPS if you're like your GPU, your CPU aren't allowing for specific things. I'm just wondering if this won't be Microsoft's way of saying, look at us. Your game's at 60, guess what? We're at 120. And the reason why I bring this up is you can't hit 90. No one's going to care about 90. They are going to care about 120, or they are going to care about 144. 90 isn't a thing. There's no reason. You don't see people saying we have a 90 refresh monitor, but they do say we have a 144 or a 120. And to get to those, you have to double your FPS, which maybe Microsoft is thinking Sony can't do. And so we're going to say 120 for everything, which is like Microsoft's end around for whatever Sony's saying with the SSD. I'm just thinking off the box here of why they've really gone to this 120. Ori and the Blind Forest, hey, guess what? Free 120 update. Forza, guess what? Free 120 update. They just keep talking about this 120. I don't know. Do you think that, or do you think they're even thinking that far forward?
Yeah.
And maybe they're just...
You know, I don't know. I mean, we had had a brief discussion about this in Maddie's Discord, but in order to do 120, you really need a TV that has HDMI 2.1, right? As far as a TV, though, I mean, obviously, like monitors and stuff have been doing high frame rate, but like my last 4K TV that I bought 3 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, was only 60, and all my friends, theirs can only do 60. So to me, I always thought that it was like, well, even if you can do 120, most of the market is not going to be able to support that refresh rate on their TV.
Guaranteeing 120, but multiple, including LG, what's the one with the Z? Vizio, thank you.
Vizio?
Have done multiple firmwares where they go to native 120. So 120 is definitely possible on some of these, especially if they're 2.4. And in fact, there's actually a website now that's like, here's all the ones where if you want native 120, just make sure you have this setting on and it's native 120. So it's like, it's not as, you're absolutely right in that, just like many people probably aren't at 4K TV. I mean, obviously 4K is getting bigger, but still people have 1080p. It's for sure not as big, but it is certainly something that is definitely possible. And I'm going to be honest here, I don't know if they care. Because saying they do 120 is not the same thing as having to do it. Like, it'll be possible, but I'm not, what I'm saying is I think a lot of consumers could be easily duped. You know what I mean? Into just being like, oh, it is 120. You know, just guessing off the top of my head here, but you have a monitor that'll do this,
I don't know,
right? And I have two that do that, and then my TV does do it, has a refresh. And I have checked. I actually I have a HDMI like tester, you know, so you can see that. Oh,
nice.
But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It just seems to me like, marketing. They all do marketing. It just seems to me like it's sort of the marketing thing to do, where Microsoft's like, okay, you want to talk about your SSD, we're going to talk about frame rates, and frame rates seem to be a little easier to explain to people right now. So it just seems like Microsoft has sort of slightly nudged their discussion over towards that for the time being. But you know who's missing, bro? Nintendo. Where's our Switch 2?
Oh, yeah. I was wondering about that. Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It was a couple of months ago that they were like, yeah, we're not doing any hardware in 2020, which is probably smart with, Microsoft and Sony going this year. So who knows? Maybe they're going to try to pull another March, which I feel like with a Switch, do you think that they're going to just do like a Switch Pro situation?
I would want them a real Switch Pro, but Maddie's reminded me multiple times, just Nintendo doesn't work that way. They just don't.
Right. So. Well, I mean, they did the 3DS and the new 3DS, which was kind of
I think it was kind of a similar model. I mean, I don't know if people would consider the I mean, maybe they would, and I could be wrong on that, but I don't know if they considered that a Pro, like what I would consider a Pro Switch, which would be an FPS / resolution. I don't know. I really want it. It's not going to happen. I shouldn't even have brought it up because it's not going to happen. I do like a lot of the games on the Switch. At times it's really ugly, man. I just played what's the one?
Dude.
Not Witcher, the other one. Oh, it's resolution Outer Worlds. Pretty rough.
Oh, yeah. The Switch, like, if they could just, I guess it is a Pro version is what I want, but there's things that they could do that wouldn't be hard. Like, isn't it like if they could just make it so it had, not that it renders at 4K, but it had 4K output? You know what I mean? That would make a big difference. I can't believe, we were talking about this on my show the other day, how the Switch does not have Bluetooth audio support. I remember being on a plane for the first time with my Switch, and I got on my earbuds. This was like a few weeks after it came out, on my way to PAX that March.
Right.
And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. So, yeah, I feel like there's so many little, and the kickstand, obviously, it's awful, but I don't know. Maybe they are just waiting for.
Well, discussing all this is a good segue, because I did want to discuss some of the add-ons for the Switch. This is something that's brought up in the Discord, in Maddie's Discord, a lot of times as well. And people do know I do buy these. Originally, when Bluetooth was having its issue, I bought a Bluetooth transmitter and Bluetooth receiver. You can buy them off of Amazon, and you can do the Adantec X low latency. And they were like $15 a piece. So for $30, you could get Bluetooth audio from your Switch. But now they have like 6 or 7 dongles. I just looked at it last night. There's just a bunch of dongles. You can just go into Amazon, pick, and they all have the same. They all have the low latency codec, and you just plug it into the bottom. I thought that was very cool. Yeah, very cheap too.
Interesting.
In fact, a couple people bought them in the last couple weeks and have been very happy with them. They don't suck battery power as much as people would expect, because the Switch doesn't have the best battery power. And as somebody, I don't know about your phone, but my phone, if I turn Bluetooth on and it just let it sit on, I will notice that battery power is going lower and faster than if I turn it off when I can. But people are also asking me what different things I do use for my Switch, because I am sort of like the go-to guy for buying bullshit for a Switch. So I do want to explain to people. First of all, I did replace my main dock with a mini dock. And I'll give these links to Maddie. He can put them in the Discord. But I did go to a mini dock. This was also $39. And basically, you can't, it's no longer a full dock. It's quite literally just a little tiny USB-C hub. But the nice thing about it is you can output to a TV very easily. It's just, you can literally, you just plug it in, you output, it's got the HDMI out right there. It doesn't require battery power if you want to just use it for that, which I thought was awesome. It's a passive transmitter from the USB-C that's at the bottom of the Switch into the HDMI. It will charge your system. It will also charge your Pro controller, because it's got a USB out on it, so you can charge both at the same time, which I thought was very cool. Do you have any of these kind of things for yours? Are you?
So I've been wanting to get one of those mini docks because I've lugged a normal Nintendo dock around and I hate it. Last time I was looking into it, there was that scare. This was years ago, so there was that worry that they would like blow up your Switch, like the voltage was fucked up on them. So since then I've been like skeptical and just haven't really looked into it. And for the most part, I don't really need a mini dock because I'm not usually traveling around with one. But there are times, like particularly right now, I told you this beforehand, but I'm visiting my parents right now, and I was like, should I bring my Switch dock? And I'm like, I don't want to lug that big thing. And I was like, it would be nice to have a mini dock. So
I'll send you the link in the Discord. But so basically, this one's checked for voltage. The issue with these docks also is they replace the main dock, which scratches up the front of a lot of Switches. I had the old main dock, right? The bad one, I guess, as people said. So I wanted to replace that. So I replaced that, and then the next thing I did was I bought a battery carriage. And so what that is it's an extra battery that clips like a C-clamp onto the back of your Switch. And you can charge it with anything. And when you're charging it, it can be charged at super high, coming in MAH, very high, or amps, I'm sorry. And then it will only feed the Switch the exact amperage it needs. So you can charge that thing fast, and it is amazing. It adds like a full 8 hours to the Switch. It does make it a little bit heavier, but dude, I don't care. Like, it's so nice, and it still allows for the HDMI out, still has an opening there for you to do all this kind of stuff. And I've been really sort of like getting a lot of a lot of Switch extra stuff just on the side.
Have you tried one of these specifically? My wife has the Satisfy
I
grip.
love it.
Yeah, she has a Switch Lite. It's awesome. I wish I had one. She actually, what's funny, we pull her in for reviews here and there when there's stuff that would, fit her, since she's somewhere, she's not a casual phone gamer, but she plays, like she played through and beat Breath of the Wild before I did. But half of the stuff we talked about on the show, she's gonna have no clue. So yeah, she has one of those Satisfy grips and she loves it. She's like, I would not want to play my Switch Lite without it at this point. So
yeah,
it's nice.
The cool thing about the Satisfy, I had to modify mine with a router because my battery carriage, I think Satisfy on purpose puts a little hook and it won't allow you to use a third-party battery extender. So what I did was I checked, verified by cutting a little tiny X out of one of the handles that it wouldn't that nothing was connected there. And I did do so I can use both the Satisfy and this battery pack. And dude, I would not use the Switch with the old, because my thumbs get really painful using the original Switch Joy-Cons. In fact, I don't know where the originals are. Like, I don't have any clue. But the Satisfy is super comfortable. And then the battery dock I have has a better leg out, a better, like, if you do want to, set it up on a table and play it. And dude, it's crazy, man. It's there's so many little side things you can do with the Switch. Not necessarily like magically change anything, but just to sort of make it a little bit better. Like, I have the external anti-aliasing chip, M Classic, which is fantastic. Huge difference.
I started getting one of those
with the cables,
many
times.
M
Classic cables, because they were like $39, and then the M Classic USB adapter came out, and I was like, well, you know what, I'll check it out. And I don't think I won't play it for reviews. I purposely will not, I'll never alter the way a system would be played by a person buying a game. But the moment that game's over, the moment that review's over, I fucking plug that USB thing right back in. Yeah, it really does improve the look of games.
You've probably put me over the edge, because I've considered buying that many times, and I'm like, is it really? I've seen the videos and I'm like, okay, I see the difference.
Do you have a good scaler though on your
YouTube
TV?
Probably doesn't do it justice.
Scaler so I do. I have a pretty good scaler, but sometimes I'm plugging it into other devices to record and stuff, and then it can get, or just because I want to sit at that place and it doesn't have a great scaler on the TV. If your TV is really good and modern, it may not see a huge difference. It just depends.
Yeah, I have the
LG
C9.
C9's a good TV.
So
it's a good TV.
Yeah. It was very expensive, but it's very nice.
I mean, and that's the thing. I went with the Samsung, the 85, and like awesome TV, great scaler. I still notice it on there, but it depends on the game, especially low. The Samsung has one of the better scalers, so it's a little less noticeable. But especially on like a Witcher, dude, Witcher, you wouldn't even. I mean, not that you or I would really probably play on a 4K. Why would we if we have a PC? But there's some, like, I go to the cabins to play D&D with friends. We just leave society behind. And it's like when we go out there, sometimes everybody's asleep and I'm awake. Well, it's like they have a 4K TV, but it's shit out in the middle of the woods in some cabin somewhere. So being able to use this this HDMI scaler helps. So I have it for that. But yeah, it's just cool, man. Anybody, if you're out there and you have any questions on any of this, you can feel free to ping me or Maddie or Dustin. But there's definitely a lot of devices out there that I think we were all surprised it didn't have Bluetooth. Like, what the fuck? So not only that, but the Bluetooth, I don't even know if a lot of Bluetooth devices at first didn't have the low latency, which is a big deal if you're playing video games. So now you can get these. I definitely would suggest if you want to, you go and check online. There's multiple ones that don't have any issues, and definitely get them. You can get some extra use out of your system. Is there anything else I use? Anything you use?
Trying to think. I'm pretty light on Switch accessories now I think about it. I do have it's funny, I made fun of them when they came out, but when I first got the Switch, there's like the grips that you can plug the Joy-Cons in that turn them into like they're just plastic. But I use them and I'm like, whoa, this is actually a pretty decent solution for if you need to have like 4 or 5 controllers at once and you don't want to spring for buying that many Pro controllers. But so no, I'm pretty light on. I do have one of those like holders, like it's like a metal holder so that when you're on a plane you can sit it right and not have to use the terrible kickstand.
Yeah, it's very cool that all these exist.
I've been curious. People go crazy modding and putting different stuff on their Oculus Quest. Have you seen this? People they put like the Vive head strap on it and their own like audio solutions, and I've looked at that and I'm like, that's a slippery slope. And the funny thing is I don't even play my Quest that often. It sounds fun to
I did wireless on my Vive, but which was not a mod that you could. It was purchasable at the time, and that worked. And then I modded the Samsung. I think was the one I had to mod the headset because I'm pretty sure that if I remember right, the Odyssey didn't have unplugged back. I can't remember. I've got so many headsets. But I've messed around a couple. I won't mess anything with the Fate. I'll put the VR cover because that thing is so comfortable. I buy that for every headset. That's the first. I wouldn't even buy a headset if I can't get a VR cover for it. So I get that right away. But when it comes to the headset, I don't mess around with it too much. I did buy a strap, a generic, because the reverb is front to back, no over the head. And I find that over the head helps if you want to pull it up and get it off your brow. If you're one of those type of people where it rests on your brow and after a while you're like, man, this is just not comfortable. It's giving me that front headache. Those are like $15 and I bought one of those completely generic and it absolutely helped. Every single person I know, that's the only way they'd play it or wear it. So, but yeah, modding that kind of stuff sort of crazy, right? Like you're taking your life in your own hands because those things are expensive, and I don't think there's not a warranty. It's like if they see a bunch of screwdriver marks, dude. I don't know if you saw, there are people who replace the Vive lenses. That like, what's that?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah,
nut bar. They go in there and unscrew shit and like desolder stuff, and they got some balls.
That's
Draw
the soldering line is where I'm
not messing around with electronics and anything, dude. I've tried that a couple times. I've never put anything successfully back together again in my life. So I can get it apart. Moving on from there, what do we got here? Oh, Cuphead. I wanted to hear what you thought. So Cuphead for PS4 got released what? This week?
Yeah, it was this week. I can't remember. It was like early in the week.
You got it and got to play it. What'd you think?
Yeah, so I've played it on Xbox Switch, and then I was like, you know what? It's like Cuphead is one of those games I love this game, and I was like, you know what? I want to buy it again just because. First of all, I had the free $10 credit that they're sending out to people on PSN, so I was like, you know what? $10. I love this game. I'm gonna buy it again just because and play it again for fun. And yeah, it's the same Cuphead you know and love, only it's on PS4. The only interesting thing is that's surprising to me is that there are some like slowdowns, like frame rate issues on really intense parts. Yeah, specifically, I'm thinking of, for me at least, it's happened in a few different levels. The one I'm thinking of right now is the airplane level with the bird. When at the end he's in the stretcher and he's like coughing up stuff, I will have weird like frame rate jitters, just a little bit, but it's enough that I'm like, yeah. So, which is weird because I think the Switch version was like practically perfect. Like I don't think there was really any kind of frame rate stuff going on, but yeah, it's cool that it's out on Switch, especially because at one point, I don't know if it was Microsoft or the guys at MDHR that were like, yeah, this game it will always be only on Xbox and PC. And then of course it came to Switch, which is somewhat understandable just because they're, the Microsoft Switch isn't as big as of a competition between Microsoft and Sony. So, I mean, you have to imagine that they were sitting around at a table and be like, well, we're not selling any consoles because of Cuphead, and everyone who won it bought it.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we release it on PS4 and make a boatload of money?
Makes perfect sense.
You know?
What do you think about controls and everything? Feel identical? No issues? Does it use gyro or anything?
Yeah,
crazy?
No issues.
PS4? No. Okay.
No. Yeah. I prefer. I don't know. Everyone has their preferences. I prefer the PS4 controller, especially when it comes to D-pad. So I'm enjoying playing it with the PS4 D-pad in particular. But yeah, nothing. There's really nothing special about it. It's just Cuphead. It's out on PS4, so there's a whole new audience of people. If you haven't played it yet, anyone listening to this, I highly recommend it. It is super fun, super creative. And it is really, that was going to be my next question.
Have you found that, like, you played it 3 times? Well, this will be your 3rd time. Have you found that would you consider yourself good at it, or are you still like, it's still fucking hard, man? The game is still just hard.
It's weird because every time I play it, different bosses are harder to me at the time. So the first time I played, did you play through all of it? Okay. The first time I think it was King Dice, which I would say overall, I think King Dice is the hardest overall. The second time I played, it was the robot with the mad scientist. And this time I just beat that, and it only took me like, I don't know, probably 20-ish to 30 minutes to beat him, which compared to the second time, it took me forever. I was working at that boss for like probably 2 to 3 hours. So yeah, it's interesting how it changes. Overall though, I was thinking about trying to get the platinum. Like that was my goal before, when it was like when it was first getting announced. I'm like, I totally want to play this, get the platinum. But now that I'm looking, there's some trophies that I'm like, not gonna happen. There's a trophy for beating King Dice without taking a single hit, which I don't think I'll be able to do that. You have to get an A in every stage.
That game was actually hard.
So
like it was just I mean, even I remember playing it and being like, it's not that you can't, I mean, people are gonna be able to no hit win it. Like somebody out there, some jackass with a fucking, guitar controller, right? Who's looking the other way will beat it. We know that. But I'm saying for normal or even good gamers, even if you're good at it, you're not really, it's easy to die in that game. Even if you're good at it. That's what I found out about that game. Is like, it didn't really matter. Like my skill level got high, but with like a Neo, once I get to a certain level, I know most guys I can take on. I can take this guy, I can do this. I pretty much, there's like a level of anxiety I may get from an enemy. I felt with that game, once you get like past the second level, it really didn't matter. It was like there was a chance of dying no matter what. Like just a stray thing. And it's like, okay, well, you're dead, and you got to start this part over. It was, I can see why a lot of people probably aren't in love with it. I thought that the Switch got a difficulty that was easier, though.
I know that, so you can play the levels.
There's two difficulties.
There's like when you first play, and then once you beat it, there's like an expert difficulty as well.
I'm sorry,
but yeah. Honestly, I'm surprised that this game is so successful with how hard it is. Because I mean, the only thing I can think is that and I know people like this, that they're like, I like the idea of Cuphead, and then they buy it and they're like, this is great, and then they maybe get a few bosses in, and then they're like, I don't like this, it's just too hard. So I don't know, maybe I'm curious. I've never actually played the easy mode. I'm wondering if that's a lot more. I'm curious how simple or how much easier it actually is.
It lowers the amount of, like, you wouldn't call them ads, but I remember distinctly. Remember it's like only the first or second level. There's a pyramid in the background. Like you're flying around the pyramid. It's like it's in the footage. Yeah.
Oh, yes, with the genie.
Yes. If I remember right, there's like some creatures that can come out, and like on easy it's 2, and like on normal it's like 4 or 6. That's pretty much it. Admittedly, though, obviously with just double, it is twice as hard. So it's like it's hard on normal. I mean, it's not hard. It's not Dark Souls kind of hard, because I actually think that this game at times is harder than Dark Souls. It's a weird kind of difficulty where, and it might be the color scheme. It might be the color scheme where sometimes it's a little hard to tell what's going to hit you, or like, there's maybe some issues with contrast. But it's not. It doesn't make it easy. I'll just say that. It makes it easier for sure, but it doesn't make it easy.
It's so weird. I'm mostly now as an adult, like, don't really get game rage. I mean, everyone as a kid, like, slams down their controller. This game will, not that I'm like throwing controllers, but it will make me like angry. And it's funny because my wife will be like, "Are you having fun right now? Like, you don't seem like you're having fun when you're playing this." I'm like, "Yes, I'm having fun." It's weird. Like, it's one of those games. I don't know what it is about it. Like, I love how hard it is, though. Like, to me specifically, I love that aspect of it. So I don't know. Maybe I can only say that because it's like I suffered through it and I beat it, so then it feels good. But if I didn't beat it, then it'd be like, it's too hard. Because it sucks. You know what I mean?
Now, if you've beat it already, so it's like you can sort of be like, I know I can get through it. I would say with Neo 2 and 1, both of those, I didn't feel much gamer rage, but they were definitely difficult. I find the Neo games probably more, and Sekiro more difficult than like a Dark Souls. I just didn't find Dark Souls that, it was difficult, but it wasn't like, compared to, especially Neo had some bosses where I was like, what the fuck's happening?
I always tell people Dark Souls, it's just once you figure out what the game wants from you, they're really not insane. Sekiro, though, and Neo. And
the difference between Dark Souls and I think
hard.
Sekiro or Neo is that those games, they have some long boss battles, but they're not super long, where Dark Souls might have a special way to kill them a certain way or whatever, but they can be longer. Like the battle, sometimes the actual battle feels longer than those other games. And what happens with, in particular with Cuphead was when I was playing it, when I'm playing like difficult games and stuff like that, I usually get mad if I'm incredulous. If I'm like, why did this happen? And with most games, they're good about not having that.
Right.
But when a game has something where I'm not questioning and saying the game caused me to die. Obviously I did, and other people got through it. But when something just seems almost dumb, like I'm like, come on, seriously? That I will have those moments.
I felt playing Neo 2.
I don't know why I didn't get that, but I can see why anybody would. I have no clue why I didn't, but I absolutely know why you would be like, are you fucking serious? Like, Neo 1. Did you do Neo 1?
I played a lot of it, and I just was like, this is...
flying chick, she's like second or third boss? Because she like throws daggers and left
really
I don't know. I was so stressed out when I was reviewing that. I was like, am I supposed to be able to beat this? Is it impossible to beat it?
That sounds right, because I definitely was probably like 4 or 5 bosses deep in this game. So I'm trying to look and see which one it was.
And there's so many bosses in Neo.
Man.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's my problem, is trying to find bosses in Neo. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Because there was, of course, Vextra Life is the first to come up. Oh, I don't even remember her name. Oh, it's given me nightmares. I just remember you come down into a valley, and she's in like a crater or in like a canyon or something. I just remember, and I remember doing that walk, dude, so many times. And then what was weird, it was once I beat her, like everybody else didn't seem hard after that. You know, like her skill, that skill cap for getting past her was like, everybody else is just like, what the fuck ever, you know. But yeah, I get you. I get you on those games. They can definitely rage. What about Surge 2? I think we talked about this. I'm sorry if I can't remember. Did you do Surge 2?
I didn't play that one. No, I played a little bit of the first one, but I heard the second one
Surge 2 is
better.
just legitimately very fun game, start to finish. But go ahead.
You know, I was thinking about Surge. I was watching. Have you seen Dark on Netflix?
To the third season,
the German show. Okay, I'm watching it now, and I'm like in love with it. But what's interesting is that it has kids playing the Surge
in the background
in it.
Isn't that crazy?
And I was like,
you know, I told my wife that.
I was like, whoa, that's cool. Yeah, which I looked up, and it's a German studio.
Yeah.
So
makes
sense.
We got to. We were lucky enough to. I had him on the channel interview their main programmer before. He now works at Cryptic, but he worked for them on Surge 1 and most of Surge 2, and got to talk to them. And yeah, he went over there. He didn't even speak the language, like they had, you know, all this kind of crazy stuff. But very cool step up from their original game. One of the companies where you see them learn a lot between games, which was really nice. Do you want to do me a favor and look in the Discord and see if we have any questions?
Sure.
Well, you do that.
We
I'll
can
be right
do
back.
that.
I'll let my dogs in.
Okay.
Yeah, you got to take over the show.
So I got to take over the show for a minute. Take over the show. Well, thanks everybody. I've been checking out your comments, and there's been 99% a lot of really nice ones welcoming me to the show and the community, and I really appreciate that because I'm really enjoying doing this show. And you know, some of you guys in the Discord, I'm looking at specifically, if you're part of Maddie's Discord, there is a meme channel, and I have to say, the quality of the content, very good. You guys post some great memes. All right, to the podcast questions. How do we want to do this? Because I see your post here.
Yeah, just go below.
So should I go below that, or should I do the ones?
I only asked when Maddie, like, because usually asks the night before, so we probably don't even have a ton, which is fine because I mean we can cut it short too. I think there was only like 1 or 2 I saw.
Cool. All right. This one comes from Destroy the Grave. It says, how short can a beard be before it's no longer can be called a beard?
Shadow to beard? I don't know.
Yeah.
When you can't see your skin through it.
I don't know. Here's the thing.
Casual glance.
Now, Karak, I have a question for you because my whole life I've not been able to grow a full beard. It grows like almost like a goatee, like just right here, but not up here very much. So, but it can get long here. So there's times where it's been long and I'm like, is this considered a beard?
Yeah.
But that's the thing. But I don't know. It's not like perfectly trimmed like a goatee. Like it's a little scraggly up here. So
if I was doing a goatee, I usually shave like the sides, but yeah. Yeah, no, I get it.
It's like my own type
and there's so many weird names.
Beard. It's not
like
really
qualified. And then you see people with crazy beards and mustaches lately. Like I saw this one guy full French, with the French twirl, and I'm just like, damn. But no, I would say on casual glance, if you can't see their skin, it's probably a beard. That's usually the easiest way to.
Okay. That makes sense to me. All right, moving on to the Grimblade says, what upcoming games are you looking forward to that you feel like are not getting enough attention? I just discovered Genshin Impact, an open world RPG made by a mobile game company, but it actually looks pretty good. And I don't know how I haven't heard of it before. So real quick, Genshin Impact, I played it at PAX, and I played the recent, not the most recent beta, but they did another beta a few months ago. And I have some concerns, but I do think this game is actually really cool. Have you seen this at all? So what's interesting, there was a news story like a year ago that it's a Chinese studio, and it's like very, very Breath of the Wild-esque. And there was something where like people were at an event, people were like smashing PS4s in front of their booth or something, or saying that like they were copying Breath of the Wild. There's like some wild news stories about it. But it is very much like Breath of the Wild in that it's this big open world. You can paraglide around, and you collect ingredients for recipes. There's like, it's very clear. And when I was talking to the guy at the booth at PAX, he's like, yeah, we're not hiding the fact that this is very much a Breath of the Wild style game. But where it differs is that it's much more anime, and there are lots of different characters. You can swap your characters on the go. And so the characters have different elemental abilities. And what's interesting is you can do, like, for example, this is one that the developer told me, and I had similar experiences in the game. There's an ice character where he was like running and building an ice bridge, and these characters were following, or the enemies were following him out into this lake. And then when he was out in the lake, he swapped to a fire character and did this big fire move, and all the ice melted. And all the enemies around him fell in the water and drowned and died. Yeah. So like it has this, it has like this neat sandbox element to it. What's concerning is that it is free to play. And I could already tell that it has, because it is a mobile developer, it has a lot of like loot box stuff and like unlocking all these different characters and spending money to upgrade their weapons and stuff like that. So I'm a little hesitant to say it's going to be awesome because we don't know what the experience is day one when it's actually free and not a beta, what that's going to be like. But anyway, I just wanted to mention that game because it is very cool looking. I'm curious about the final release. But back to the original question, what upcoming games are you looking forward to that are not getting enough recognition?
It's coming, I'm assuming he means coming out this year, right?
He just says a game that you're looking forward to. So I'm trying to think. For me, I think, okay, here's a random one. I don't know if this is my number one. Have you seen this Weird West game from one of the lead directors of Dishonored? Have you heard of this at all? I think you might.
Sorry, no.
I can't hear you if you're talking.
Was typing.
Okay.
Because I was trying to look here and see if I've seen it.
But yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, Weird West. So this is one of the guys that left Arcane. He was one of the, I think, the founders of Arcane. And it's like a top-down, what's the word? Immersive sim. And they just recently did a pretty big gameplay deep dive on it. And it looks pretty neat if you're into those types of games.
Yeah, I'm looking at GameSpot right now. Weird West keeps the immersive sim alive. Who's this from? This is from Wolfeye.
It's a
Wolfeye
new studio. I
and
need
former
to look.
Arcane president Raphael Colatano. Okay.
Yes. And he was the one that was kind of the lead driver behind Dishonored, which, separate question, but Dishonored 2, one of the most underrated games that no one talks about, in my opinion. But I'm trying to think of other stuff upcoming.
Yeah, for me, upcoming stuff, it's difficult to like pick out, what's somebody may not think is covered, but I will say that, I'm a Dirt fan. So Dirt would probably be pretty high on my list. Project Cars, it gets some discussion, but it gets discussion because the CEO is absolutely batshit insane to the highest degree. So we hear about, like, them building their own console and shit, which fell to the wayside, all this kind of crazy shit. Yeah, dude.
I was wondering about that.
Personal dealings. So, yeah, nuts. And so you're looking at, like, Project Cars 3 supposedly coming out this month. August, sorry. I'm a big racing fan. Absolutely adore racing. And had some issues with Project Cars 2, but really excited for 3. Those kind of games I'm definitely into. I think for this fall, though, a lot of the games that we want are just going to be delayed. I think that's one of the big issues that I just think the reason why you're not hearing them is because a lot of have been, like, silently put on hold. So I just don't know even ones that are coming out. I mean, even looking at a release list is sort of crazy. I'll look again. I looked at this last night, but it just doesn't seem like it feels like a lot of us are going to have some lean months. I'll just say that,
I can pull a random one out. Just because this is one I played at PAX, is the new Harmonix game Fuser, which uses the base concept from the card game they put out, where you're doing remixes with different parts of songs. So, like, you can pick the vocal line of one song and the beat of another song, and then, like, a guitar part or something. And they figured out how to make, like, a really pretty fun game out of it. And I feel like I think Harmonix is awesome. Like, I've liked a lot of the different stuff they did, and I like music games in general. And it just lets you do, like, really wacky stuff. Like, you'll have, like, Smash Mouth mixed with Post Malone and, like, all kinds of weird stuff. So yeah, it's a neat one, and there's lots of gameplay out on it already. So if you like music games, don't sleep on Fuser, because that one will
So I saw
probably
Crash Bandicoot, which I think
cool.
is covered, and Star Wars Squadrons, which is covered. But I will say one that isn't covered. I'm supposed to do an interview with the composer, but it's sort of fallen through because of my internet. Dark Pictures Anthology, Little Hope. So they're the ones who made the other one, which I had a lot of issue. I was not a fan of that first game, and yet it doesn't matter because I'm a big fan of the idea of the first game. So I'm actually very excited for the second game, regardless of the first one being poor, in my opinion. So I'm actually those kind of games, Life is Strange, any of those kind of games, I like those, and so I'm actually really interested in that one. Very interested in that one. Marvel Avengers. I'm just gonna admit it, man. I stupidly, I like gauntlet style third person beat 'em ups, regardless of the camera, and what they showed and some of the ways they described everything will be free. All DLC, all levels will be free. All story content will be free. You will have customizables that are purchasable, but they will not make effect in the world. To me, I'm okay with. So I'm holding out hope that it's fun. I'm not saying it'll be amazing, but that'll be fun.
Right. Yeah, I'm really curious. They have that beta, which is basically just a demo, coming pretty soon. So that's going to be I haven't really been interested in the stuff I've seen, but I will always check out a beta or a demo or whatever.
I think that's the thing, dude, is like,
still time
we've
to
all
change my
dealt
mind.
with these events all these years, and this is the first year where, like, Square is doing their own weekly war tables, what it's called, for Avengers, where every week they just do an hour video. And to me, I like E3. I want it back. I like events. I don't love to go to them, but I like having one event to watch. However, we're starting to see some really cool stuff. And I personally feel I've saw more of Avengers than I would have seen if E3 had existed, because it would have been the same 500 channels covering the same hour demo that they were all shown. And instead, we now have a company who can say, hey, we're going to show you this snippet, we're going to show you this. And man, in some ways, I sort of hope some of these companies don't jump right back into the events, at least in the big way. I would like to see some of these companies say, hey, you know what, we can handle some of this stuff on the side. War table kind of stuff for Avengers is very cool. They're just like, we're just going to have everybody come and we're going to show a little bit of the game. I think that's awesome. Yeah, that's about it for me. This year is going to be weird. I mean, this year will probably be more experimentation for me, where I see a game, Vampire, I don't know if it's coming out. Werewolf, I don't know if that's coming out. Both games I'm looking forward to, but I just don't know if they're coming. So.
Yeah, that will be I think you hit the nail on the head earlier when we first started this conversation, was that I think that there are a lot of games getting delayed that we just don't know are going to be delayed, or, the weird thing right now, and we talked about Nintendo earlier, is that we don't know anything about Nintendo's holiday lineup this year. And it's almost August, right? So I'm wondering, and they've said publicly, yeah, we're having a hard time being with not productivity,
Right,
but getting stuff out right now with the current situation.
Yeah, I think, and this, so you work, okay, I can't remember. You have normal 9 to 5 and you're doing both these things on the side, or are you full-time one of these, or?
I am. I used to have a 9 to 5, but now with Colin, that's my main. So
you and I both have slightly weird jobs. The honest truth is slightly weird. So
right,
when we look though at when we look at how all of this stuff and all of these games are coming out, well, no, that doesn't make any sense either. I'm trying to figure out how we go into these titles and who's going to be experiencing them. I don't know. It just feels like this is just the weirdest year. It's just like anything that anything I would guess on, it doesn't feel like it's right, because it feels like it's just a fucked up year, and it doesn't matter what I guess. Tomorrow might completely change the entire way in which we get a game. I mean, Game Pass already was going to make this year weird. And then you have PS Now, who knows what they'll do. And then you have all these games. Some will get delayed. The illness will cause other things to get delayed. You have these companies who can't build stuff. And we don't even know, some of these companies that have been forced to work remotely, we don't even know if they were given the proper, I don't know what the term would be, the proper preparation to even do so, because things happened, right? And that's why I was asking about you, because when I've worked at old companies, we had a, what was that, chickenpox outbreak? I think it was chickenpox, where one of the guys, which is pretty rare. Oh. But dude, we had to shut down, right? And it was like, they weren't like, hey, shut down. Oh, I'll give you the computer. They were like, no, dude, don't come into work, right? Like stopping people from walking in. And that's sort of the way this happened to some companies. And some of these companies had entire plans where weekly they would all get together. It's like, what technology do they use? How do they do this? That you can't just set somebody back 6 weeks and expect them to still get the game out in the same amount of time. So it feels like November, December games in particular.
Right.
I just feel November, December games in particular, which isn't a ton, but I feel a lot of those games are pushed, and I feel like you'll just notice a leaning out. And then Cyberpunk, right? No, not a lot of companies other than Ubisoft want to release against Cyberpunk. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, and I think that with the situation with Nintendo, that they will wait until they are positive that they can line up dates or stuff like that. So, but yeah, it is interesting. It, like you said, you and I are in unique situations where I had actually I left my normal job. I had put in my 2 weeks and it was led up right to PAX. Then I went to PAX and I came home and I was fully working from home, doing different things. And then within 2.5 weeks, it was craziness.
That's you who had a plan.
But
let alone these people who, I mean, might have just got, I don't know if you just saw this, but a couple channels were like, hey, we just got an office and we have to close the office. They were like,
yeah. Well,
go ahead.
It's weird too, just because specifically working with Colin, is that we've got our remote podcasting down to a science, and we've had it working well for months. And I think that one of the reasons that Colin had such an uptick in subscribers is that his quality did not change when things started going nuts. And if you look at some other huge outlets, the biggest of outlets will say their quality
right.
went, way down, and the listeners took note.
Yeah, it's true.
So
it's true, and that it's going to affect everybody.
Yeah.
So I think that's why this, especially this year. I mean, I'll guess on the couple I guessed on, but I just don't know if any of us really know what's. I honestly just every day I wake up, I check the news, and I'm waiting for like, which movie star died, which fucking war has happened, which which game has been delayed, and then which has the games of the next gen consoles had a price which we haven't even got yet, which is crazy. Well, I mean, not crazy, but it is crazy.
I know.
It's just another sign of the craziness. So a lot of this stuff is like up in the air. I don't know. Let's see. Looking at the last thing we've got here. Actually, that's it for topics. Do we have any last questions?
Yeah, there were. I think some of these questions were from throughout the week, but I feel like we can maybe Maddie will use them for like
for sure.
One of the extra slice episodes. We don't.
Was there any in there absolutely particular? If there wasn't, then we can wrap it up.
Unless you know something about
I do
racing wheels
all the time.
Someone's asking about what's a good starter wheel with force feedback. That's from I am.
Does he say PS4, PC, or Xbox? Okay. For PC and PS4, there is the Thrustmaster 150, which is fine. People need to understand that force feedback has multiple different types. Gear pinion, and then you have belt, and then you have bungee cord. Don't worry about the bungee cord. That's not even really force feedback. It just fakes it. But the Thrustmaster series, once you get into force feedback, it's pretty nice. If you want to spend a bunch of money, none of those are even good. You want to go Fantech, which is like $1,000. And so what happens is once you start looking at Thrustmaster ones with their force feedback and Logitech as well, those are sort of interchangeable in how good they are. Some people like Logitech, some people like Thrustmaster, but once you get into about 120, I think it's 129 right now, 129 plus, then really what you're getting is generically the same thing except for the pedals. And what'll happen is a lot of them will sell you a pretty good steering wheel with shit pedals, absolutely terrible pedals. What I would say is verify, like, if you're doing it at home and you won't have a rack where you sit down, like I have an actual seat. I'm a nerd, but I have a seat and a mount and all this shit where I'm pressing hard. If you don't have that ability, you should look into complaints or positives that people have about any of the Logitech or the Thrustmasters, because their pedals have a tendency to be really tough. And if you put that on the ground and try to press down, you're not hitting the brake. It'll slide right out from under your feet. You have to have mounts. So that's the problem. If that doesn't answer your question, again, like I said, 129 is where it starts price-wise. If that doesn't answer your question, you might want to say what platform you're talking about next time, because they're not compatible unless you buy a Brooks adapter, which makes all items work on all items, and I think they're $49. That's what mine cost, which you can certainly do, and it saves you money. Also, remember, all PS4 and all Xbox stuff will be forward compatible. Well, wait a minute. It sounds like Sony just reversed that, but for sure, Xbox is going to be forwards compatible. I'm assuming PlayStation will as well. I'm just assuming that. God, they're expensive. They should be.
Yeah. Last time I used a racing wheel was at PSX when Gran Turismo Sport was coming out, and I told the guy, I was like, "Listen, dude, I'm gonna be terrible at this. Put me on the easiest setting." And he was like, "Oh, you're fine." And then he's like, I could tell it was an embarrassing moment for me, because the guy is like, "Oh yeah, you're having some difficulty there." And I was like, "Yes, I told you I would be terrible." Person? So. Oh, gotcha. Only kart racing, like
I will
real,
tell you,
real
steering wheels help,
basic
though.
stuff.
Steering wheels.
I'm always curious about it, but
like
I believe it.
You don't even the cheapest steering wheel, the fidelity of 360, or even 290 is so mind-boggling that people, when odd friends come over and they're like, "I always just play," and they do well. They're like, "I always play with a controller," and then you put them in a steering wheel, and within like 5 minutes, they're getting a full half a minute off their time or something. Like, are you kidding me? It's just the level of fidelity so much higher on, it's like a mouse and keyboard. It just takes some time to get accustomed to, for sure.
depending on the reviews for
Squadron.
Star Wars Squadrons, I might get a flight stick for that. If this game, if it's like really like a really good game, because I don't know.
Right.
I'm not into really flight games, so I don't really know what else I would do with it. So it's kind of I don't want to invest all this money in a flight stick, but the thought of flying an X-Wing in VR with
What's
a flight
amazing
stick
too, dude, Dustin, is they're only
awesome.
$49 for the Thrustmaster, and I own it for the PS4, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's $49.99 for the Thrustmaster. And Thrustmaster,
okay.
If anything is good about Thrustmaster, it's that their budget price is not bad at all. And I have it for Ace Combat, which came out for the PS4 a year ago. And it also works on the PC, and I have a better one, but there's been so many times where I played a game on the PC, I'm like, fuck, I'm not getting the Rhino out, the nice one. I just grab that one, put it on. It has a split. You can actually separate the throttle and everything. It's got buttons on it. It's got like, a hat switch, and it $49.99, and that thing is at the very minimum, dude. It will show you if you want to ever in the future get something, but you will have all the actual capabilities of a joystick and fidelity, the higher fidelity, to even decide. And I got to tell you, I know friends who play Elite for hours, and they're still rocking anywhere from the, maybe they go a little bit better later on, but a lot of them are still rocking the $49 because they're just like, maybe they don't like you. They're like, I don't do a bunch of these, but I like this one game. So yeah, you should check it out. It's not bad. 49 to 100. You don't have to spend that fucking, yeah, the crazy amount.
The crazy amount.
All right, so we'll end it there. I want to thank everybody. And thanks to Dustin for showing up. We schooled Matty, man. He couldn't be here, but look at us. We are
That's right.
Ham Radio Podcast. I got it right. 262. If you guys got this far, hashtag.
Hashtag peripheral. Hashtag flight stick. I don't know.
So am I.
I'm trying to think of an overall theme.
So am I. What did we hashtag get better. Get better. And that'll be not only for Cuphead, but also for Matty.
Oh, yeah.
Matty will think it's about him because he's egotistical as shit. I'm just joking. He's not. Matty will think it's about him. We will all know it's about getting better at Cuphead or difficult games. But I'm just joking. Hashtag get better.
Right.
If you got this far, absolutely appreciate everybody doing so. You guys have been an awesome audience. Hopefully you enjoy these kind of podcasts. I apologize if we didn't do as good as Matty running the place, but you know what? This is only like third time we've had to do this. But I definitely appreciate Dustin for jumping in here. And you guys will catch us on the next one. Peace out.